Muzammil Beg, who to my mind represent a breed of an emerging new generation of young people who are prepared, not prepared just to watch passively and wait for somebody to do something, but recognize that if things have to change, it's they who have to act and they who have to take charge, because ultimately it's their country and their future that's at stake. I'm personally deeply inspired by their passion and their drive for change. And I've been very pleased to be involved with whatever separate projects that they have been working on. You already heard what Project DEEP does. It's working to develop evidence-based approaches on critical policies such as unconditional cash transfers, which are designed to empower communities and stimulate inclusive growth. This report that you see and that will be released today is an example of one of their outputs from their wonderful work. They're also co-leading the India Basic Income Coalition, a group of civil society organizations, academicians, and government officials who have come together with a shared purpose of promoting and strengthening direct cash transfers in India. As we all know, the most critical of shared projects that we face, no matter which field we are engaged in, is to find a way to bring this great ancient country of ours to a point where every one of our citizens experiences a state of well-being that is comparable to what we would wish for ourselves if we happen to change places with them. That we are far away from this ideal is clear from the fact that while 10% of us enjoy standards of living comparable to those of the Scandinavians, 90% of our fellow citizens have per capita income levels compared to that of South Sudan, amongst the poorest countries in the world. Philosophers like John Rawls remind us that a society must be judged by how it treats its least advantaged. In economic terms, that is not just about fairness. It's about recognizing that if large segments remain excluded, the entire economy underperforms. Justice and growth in that sense are two sides of the same coin. And I will illustrate this a little bit more in the rest of my remarks. For this reality that we face of extreme inequality and low incomes, there is little doubt, as people will remind us again and again, that the economy as a whole needs to grow faster. The fact that China raised its per capita income from $350 to $12,500 per capita by growing at 12% per annum from 1990 to 2023, while during the same period, we grew at 6% per annum, going from $350, roughly the same level as China, to $2,500 right now. This represents an important limiting factor that is driving our overall current reality. A goal that I've seen sometimes being articulated is that of $14,000 per capita income for the country by 2047, which means we need a rate of growth of 7.5% per annum on a steady basis over the next several decades. And while 7.5% per annum is well short of the 12% that China delivered, it is nevertheless an ambitious target for us, given the current state of our economy. And while we can endlessly debate if this number is large enough and whether we should be aspiring for a larger number, the key question is how will we enable this growth, whether it is 7.5% or 12%. That question still needs to be answered. One pathway that's available to us is to focus on our well-established engines of growth, find a way to get them to grow faster, pick other likely winners and have the government provide them with the fiscal and other support that they need to grow, and have the government drive investments in key growth-promoting infrastructures like roads, ports, railways, and continue to support vulnerable sectors through credit, energy, and fertilizer subsidies, and engage in modest cash handouts to ensure that concerns relating to social unrest are kept at bay, while the rest of us, the rich, get on with the business of it. This approach, the problem with this is that this is precisely the strategy we have pursued so far, and it has not yielded the kind of results that we need, both in terms of growth and equity. And in my view, more of the same is unlikely to do so. Another pathway is to pursue a very different direction and to make a deeper commitment to a broader growth strategy, in which the reliance is not just on the segments that have historically shown growth momentum, but on unlocking the growth momentum of the entire economy by embracing the core logic of the market in all sectors such as manufacturing, financial services, infrastructure, energy, and agriculture, where markets are inherently capable of identifying and delivering value and rapidly withdrawing the government from it. Next, focusing the attention of the government on sectors such as healthcare and primary education, where markets are inherently incapable of delivering Pareto optimality. And with the savings from withdrawing from all these sectors, launching large-scale unconditional cash transfers, not the tiny amounts of a few hundred rupees here and a few thousand rupees there, but much larger amounts, so that structural enablers of long-term broad-based growth start to be established deep within the economy. Those committed to justice see cash transfers as restoring dignity and basic security. Those focused on growth should see them as efficiency reforms that unlock productivity. The beauty of this instrument is that it serves both purposes. It invests in people and it strengthens markets. For those who worry about handouts, it is crucial to be aware that when cash transfers displace distortionary subsidies, they reduce waste, they restore price signals, and let families and firms allocate resources much more efficiently. This three-pronged approach, I will submit to you, will drive deeper and more durable growth. One, through efficiency gains, through the restoration of price signals, a stronger competitive environment, and replacement of investments in vanity government projects and enterprises by those that have clear value to add, as reflected in their returns and equity. I've been a banker largely in charge of corporate banking and infrastructure finance for over 20 years. And it is clear to me that markets, companies are very ready to take on the projects of any size that the country needs. Just the gain in this efficiency by the government withdrawing from these sectors and distorting prices can have a sharp upward increase in the economy's growth signal. The investment in healthcare and in primary education will lead to broader human capital formation through universal health and schooling outcomes, because the government will be paying more attention to them. And the cash transfers will result in broader capital accumulation and risk management, as the presence of cash transfers and increased incomes draws service providers, lenders, insurance, and supply chains to shift their attention to those new markets. Muzammil mentioned the committee that I chaired for Reserve Bank of India when I was on the board on financial access. One of the numbers that we had cited in that report was the low credit to GDP ratio in a state like Bihar. Compared to what a number of 200 to 250% is what we expect to see, the number in Bihar is under 20%. Imagine an environment in which that number went from 20% to 150% or 200%. The growth that it unleashes will be dramatic. This growth is likely to produce a new Pareto optimum that is both more socially optimal and one that has a much higher level of equilibrium growth as millennia-old credit and other constraints are removed. These reforms will have to be implemented carefully and sensitively. First step, this is something I reflect on in the forward as well, diagnosis and sequencing. This will require all significant subsidies and state-owned enterprises to be classified by their efficiency, equity, and necessity, and beginning with the most aggressive and elite captured areas, such as fertilizer, energy, and credit. A gradual dismantling of these subsidies and these state-owned enterprises will need to take place. Having done that, the second step would be compensation and institutionalization. The introduction of carefully structured transfer programs, including, and this is important to bear in mind, to the elites who formerly benefited from the capture of subsidies, because otherwise they will defeat the reform check. And these are gradually scaled up and institutionalized. These transfers will have to be framed not merely as handouts to keep the poor in check, but as investments in people and not in unproductive firms or commodities. Crucially, by funding transfers to the rollback of regressive subsidies, we can keep the reform fiscally neutral while improving allocative efficiency. This approach will build public trust and administrative capacity without fiscal shocks. It also prevent reform fatigue or backlash, especially in countries like ours, which are democracies. While this is a challenging process, there are several examples of developed and developing economies that have successfully made this. Particularly notable one is that of Brazil, where Bolsa Familia replaced distortionary subsidies with targeted cash transfers, reduced inequality without compromising fiscal discipline. In my view, unconditional cash transfers, significant unconditional cash transfers, not just small amounts, handouts, are how we make India's market bigger, faster, and fairer, so that every citizen becomes a driver of growth and not simply somebody that we carry along. By 2047, we should aspire not just to be richer, but to be more just. Unconditional cash transfers offer a pathway to both, driving growth by unleashing demand and enterprise, and at the same time ensuring that no citizen is left. This, I would argue, is how nations like ours become strong and enduring, when both efficiency and fairness reinforce each other. Thank you very much.